Have you ever wondered how a massive global organization manages to stay true to its mission without, totally crushing the unique cultures it's trying to serve? Well, today, we're diving into the story of the Navigators. They're a global ministry that did a complete 180, moving from a really rigid top-down blueprint to a flexible approach that empowered local leaders to find their own way. And the craziest part? It actually made them stronger and more unified than ever before.
And that really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? How do you stay united without losing that local soul? I mean, it's the classic problem when anything gets bigger. Do you go for that cookie-cutter consistency where everything looks the same? Or do you embrace the local flavor? The journey the Navigators took gives us a pretty fascinating look at how you might just solve that puzzle.
All right, so here's our game plan for breaking down their story. First up, we'll look at their initial shot at creating one single philosophy. Then, we're going to see where that foundation started to get some serious cracks. After that, we'll explore the radical shift they made, from teaching to discovery, and see the powerful results of that change. And finally, we'll see how it all came together to forge a brand new, shared global identity.
So, our story kicks off back in the 1970s. The Navigators are growing, and they're growing fast, spreading all across the globe. But with all that success came a huge problem. A full-blown identity crisis. Staff in all these different countries were asking the same basic questions. Who are we, really? What actually makes us us? They were desperate for a shared language, some kind of common ground to stand on.
So what did they do? Their first answer was this landmark project called the Fundamentals of the Navigator Ministry, or FOM for short. It was spearheaded by leaders like Lauren Sanney and Jim Peterson, and let me tell you, it was a massive undertaking. It was designed to bring clarity, focus, and a sense of unity to their staff all over the world. And after years of work, they rolled it out in 2 major editions.
Now, FOAM wasn't just some fluffy mission statement. Oh no, it was basically a seminar in a book. Think of it like a master blueprint, a teaching tool that was handed down from the top. The whole idea was to capture the distilled essence of the Navigator way and make sure that everyone, whether you're in Singapore, South Korea, or Germany, was building their ministry from the exact same set of plans.
This quote right here gets straight to the heart of what FOM was all about. See, the goal wasn't just to make individual disciples. It was about creating a system of multiplication, reproducing the makers of disciples. A ministry that couldn't do that, well, in their eyes, it was a dead end. Totally limited by what just one person could do. FOM made this idea of spiritual generations completely non-negotiable.
And for about a decade, it worked. FOM brought stability, it brought focus, but by the late 1980s, the organization was getting more and more culturally diverse. And that very blueprint, the thing that was designed to create unity, started to show some really serious cracks. The issue was, a single blueprint designed with a pretty Western mindset just isn't a universal fit. Right? I mean, imagine trying to apply a superstructured American-style goal-setting framework in a culture that's all about relational, organic growth. It just wasn't connecting. In a lot of places, the approach felt too corporate, too rigid, and as they put it, it had lost traction. People were worried they were just imposing a sterile uniformity instead of actually nurturing a living, breathing unity.
So they found themselves right back at that same fundamental tension. The old solution, that top-down blueprint, just wasn't cutting it anymore. The leadership knew they couldn't just write a FOM 3. They needed a totally new approach, something that could connect their global staff with a shared purpose that felt authentic and, maybe most importantly, was actually owned at the local level.
This whole dilemma pushed them toward a solution that was, frankly, pretty radical and innovative. They realized the answer wasn't a new product like another version of FOM. No, the answer was a whole new process. And this shift, well, it would change absolutely everything about their philosophy.
This new process was called the Scriptural Roots of Our Ministry, or SRM, and the difference was just huge. Where FOM was a teaching tool designed to give people the right answers, SRM was an open, explorative study designed to help people discover the answers for themselves, straight from the Bible.
This table just lays it all out so clearly, right? You can see the whole paradigm shift right here. The metaphor changed from a rigid blueprint to a flexible set of tools. The method went from a seminar that taught conclusions to a study that was all about self-discovery. And the goal? It was no longer uniformity of practice, but something so much deeper, a unity that came from shared, personal conviction.
And listen, this wasn't some quick weekend Bible study. The SRM process was intense. It often took over a year. It involved teams doing really deep biblical research on core ministry topics.
All of that would lead up to these multi-day forums where they'd come together, hash out their findings, and then, and this is the most important part, work together to apply those biblical principles to their own unique cultural context.
And the result of this massive shift from teaching to discovery? It was absolutely transformative. It didn't just update their philosophy, it unleashed this incredible new wave of creativity, innovation, and a deep, personal sense of ownership all across the entire global movement.
This brings us to the core outcome of the whole SRM process, what leaders began to call theological self-sufficiency. Now, that's a powerful idea. It meant that local leaders were no longer just passive recipients of some Western template. They were now actively discovering and articulating the biblical foundations for their ministry, in their own words, for their own people. They finally had theological ownership.
So how did this happen? It happened because the SRM process encouraged the growth of what are called hermeneutical communities. Okay, that's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple and really powerful. It's just groups of people learning how to study, interpret, and apply the Bible together. Instead of being told what the Bible says about ministry, they were learning how to find out for themselves as a team.
As Jim Peterson, one of the architects of this whole process, said later on, this was the key that unlocked real innovation. When the staff saw for themselves what the scriptures were saying, they felt this profound freedom to just follow them. It allowed them to break free from what he called the dead hand of traditionalism and create new ways of doing ministry that were both biblically solid and actually made sense in their culture.
Now, you might think that this kind of decentralized, grassroots ownership would lead to chaos, maybe even pull the organization apart. But what happened was the exact opposite. This new foundation of local strength and shared discovery created the perfect groundwork for the next and maybe the most important stage of their global unity. A key metaphor they used to describe this came from the book of Isaiah. Their global expansion was like lengthening the cords of their tent, reaching more and more nations. But the SRM process was strengthening the stakes, making sure that each location was deeply and securely grounded in its own biblical convictions. And you really need both of those things to build something that's strong and is going to last. This foundation of strengthened stakes is what made it possible for over 80 leaders from all around the world to get together in 2002 and create a new global consensus. It wasn't another Fokipom. This was something different. They called it the core, and it was a unified expression of their shared calling, values, and vision. And here's the crucial part. It was built from the ground up, on a foundation of shared discovery, not top-down instruction. So, the Navigator's journey from a rigid blueprint to a shared adventure leaves us with a really powerful question for any organization, maybe even yours. What is the true source of unity? Is it a common rulebook that's handed down from on high? Or is it the trust, the conviction, and the energy that can only come from a shared journey of discovery?